Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and every once in a while I experience some kind of a technical problem, as I did yesterday. So I am retaping the Chapter 8 lecture from Murox JavaScript and jQuery 3rd edition. Chapter 8 is the beginning of... Chapter 8 is the beginning of Section 2 of the book. Section 2 is all about jQuery. You are very slowly introduced to a subset of jQuery in Chapter 8. Then in Chapter 9, we go into some of the special effects and animations that you can use in jQuery. Chapter 10 is all about working with forms. Chapter 11 is on jQuery plugins. And Chapter 12 is on Ajax and JSON. Ajax being asynchronous JavaScript and XML, and JSON being JavaScript object notation, where you can do partial page refreshes. So, we get an introduction to jQuery here, the basics of jQuery program, and they also do or redo 4 different applications in jQuery. First is an email application. Then we go into some of the more useful selectors, methods, event methods, etc. And the chapter ends with going over, redoing the FAQ application in jQuery, the image swap application in jQuery, and the image rollover application in jQuery. Let me start, before we go through any of this, with 2 things. First, I sent an email out to everybody in the class today. As it says, some beginning jQuery URLs. The first one, of course, is our old friends at W3 Schools. They have what I think is a very nice jQuery tutorial. If you look along the sides here, it's very extensive. There's a lot of stuff in it. And as always with jQuery, or with any of the W3 Schools tutorials, they've got to try it yourself for virtually everything that's in here. Where you can go in here and, for example, here is where you use the hide function. You can go back in and you can add your own paragraphs. But you'll notice that if I come in here and not just add a paragraph, but if I add an unordered list, for example, so if I come in here, I'm just going to grab 5 of these and make them list item 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then end my unordered list. Oops. Alright, well, I don't want an L either, I want a UL. Here we go. So if I refresh after doing this, well, I guess it removed all that, so that's nice. But let's just come in and add our own paragraph. Alright, and I will add also just an H1. Hi there. So you'll notice that when I run it, they're both there. All right, and I can click on any paragraph, including the one that I created, and it's gone. However, we're telling it only to hide paragraphs, so the H1 does not go anywhere. All right, okay. Next, we have from hacker.io, their tutorials on learning jQuery, and what this is a list of tutorials. Some of them will say free and some of them will not. If it's paid, you do have to pay for it. If it's free, you should be able to go out there and take a look at it yourselves. All right, and finally, you've got both this in a or in electronic copy and the URL. This is a 9-part jQuery tutorial, and if you look at it, what's jQuery, what are the benefits of learning to code, etc. Part 7 is an introductory tutorial. All right, what I did was I grabbed every bit of that and put it into a Word document where I have it, but there it is. Okay. Well, the point is I moved it on this where I had it on the screen, so I can open it. probably in here. So it's right here, as it says, how's jQuery used, etc. It is 17 pages long. Every page I replicated what's on the top of the page so you can see where you are. All right, the other thing I want to mention to you is the magical site, so to speak, is jQuery.com. This is where you come in and you can download jQuery from here or from over here, and there's other things as well. Now, there's at least 3 ways to download jQuery, and there's really more than that, but I'm very quickly, hopefully, going to show you 3 different ways. First way, click the download button, and I can grab the compressed production version of jQuery 3.3.1, which is the newest version. So if I click there, it looks really ugly. You're like, that doesn't make any sense. This is a minified file, so all of the extraneous white space has been removed. All right, why would you do that? Well, if you're not going to do anything but use what's in the file, you've made the file a lot smaller. If you want to see the non-minified version, you download the uncompressed, and there it is. So those are the same file, just one of them, any extraneous comments, white space, etc. has been removed. All right. One of the last things we're going to cover in this part of the course is AJAX, or asynchronous JavaScript and XML, which allows for a partial page refresh. People say, I don't know what that means. Yes, you do. If I go into Google here and I type in J, all right, what used to always come up here when searching Google J is we used to get Google Suggest used to come up. All right, but now it shows me a list of the URLs. But the point is this. Let's look at a better one. How about this? Google Maps. All right, so if I come over here for Google Maps, and I don't know where, let's just say I'll put this in here. And it shows me where that is, okay? So again, grab that again. But do you notice how I can zoom in and out from this? The page is not completely being redrawn, just what needs to be drawn or redrawn on the page is being redrawn. That's AJAX. Well, the reason I'm telling you that is if you download this slim build, you get all of jQuery basically except for the AJAX part. So it makes the file even smaller. You can download jQuery using NPM or Yarn, using Bower. There's a migrate plugin. But the other one that you're most often likely to use is using jQuery with a CDN or Content Delivery Network. All right. So if you go in with a Content Delivery Network, you will get something that looks like this. I'm going to grab the whole thing here. Let's just leave it there. So it says to go out to the internet to https://code.jquery.com and find the newest version of jQuery, jQuery-3.3.1.js. All right. So what you're doing with a CDN or a Content Delivery Network is you are going out and using a copy of jQuery from the internet, as opposed to the other ways I showed you where you would save your copy of jQuery into your JS folder. Now there's also an integrity constraint on here, and there's also a cross-origin constraint on here. Those are basically used for what's called SRI, and you can see it down below, sub-resource integrity checking. What it does is it's supposed to make sure with things that are internal to this, that if you use this file, no one else has tampered with it. And the suggestion is, technically you could just bring in this, end that script tag, and put in your ending script tag. But the recommendation is you put the whole thing in there. Okay, sorry for that long interlude there. So the authors define jQuery as a free open source JavaScript library that provides dozens of methods. That's pretty much what it is. These functions have been coded and tested for cross-browser compatibility. So not only will they work on any browser, but they should work relatively the same on any browser. All right, which is a pretty big thing. This is the page I just showed you. I should mention too, and again, I'm not trying to get off on too big of a tangent, but if we do look there, and we go to our jQuery page, wherever it was, there we are, and we come back to just jQuery.com, the main page that you saw at the start here. Another thing that's very big here is API documentation. If you click that link, what you're shown is virtually all of the important methods that make up jQuery. So if I say, hey, I heard there was a thing in here that allows you to fade stuff in and out, yeah, if you want to automatically do it, there's something called fade toggle. So I find fade toggle, I click on it, it gives me an explanation, tells me the syntax, and it gives me a working example. All right. So you'll notice with fade toggle, okay, so you can see things fade in and fade out, or fade out and fade in. You can grab this code, it's working, it's about 25 or 30 lines, copy it and use it as you see fit. And the other thing too is in a later chapter here, we're going to go into talking about plugins. So if you want to see the main jQuery plugin registry, where there's about 2,000 or so plugins, you can go out there. All right. So there's the jQuery main page, as I mentioned. A lot of times what I do when I'm lecturing in my class is I don't do much going over what's on the page on the left in a Muroc book. I just concentrate on the page on the right, because they usually give you code or something here and then a little summary of what that's about, which I think is done very well. So if I say $, which we've been using as basically an alias for document.getElementById, in jQuery you again use the $, and you again use it as an alias, but it's an alias for the word jQuery. So if I use this, if I put in something that looks like this right here, this means jQuery, what I want are all the H2 elements that belong to an ID of FAQS. All right. This is a CSS selector. If you surround it by the $, and then parentheses with double quotes around them, it becomes not a CSS selector, but a jQuery selector that operates on CSS. So they show you an example here. This is what we have done before with that, whatever you want to call it, an accordion, all right, etc. An FAQ page, I guess. But this is what we wrote. What we're going to do is change it so it looks more like this. So what I like about Muroc books is they've already explained this concept in JavaScript. So now they're explaining it again, and they're explaining it using jQuery. So the new stuff that's in there, basically, the jQuery that's in there, they put in yellow. Now I wish they'd also put in this whole line in yellow, but they didn't. All right, that $, again, which is a shortcut for jQuery, you don't need to say document.ready. You can just say function. Most people do it like this. In fact, much, and at times, all of the jQuery code that you write will be put inside the document.ready function. Document.ready is going to replace, for all intents and purposes, what we've been putting into the window.onload function. The reason for using the document.ready instead of the window.onload is twofold. First, document.ready is part of jQuery. Second of all, document.ready loads faster than the window onload. The document.ready makes anything that's in here available to the program as soon as the DOM has been loaded. All right. So as I told you, there's many ways that you can include jQuery. You can copy it and put it right into your JS folder. You can use the CDN of the regular download or the slim download, etc. Now the author does show you here what they consider to be the most important releases of jQuery. All right. And again, 3.3.1 is the one we're working with now. They also have a little thing in there on that integrity and showing you the cross origin. Already mentioned it to you. All right. So how to code jQuery selectors. Notice, start with a $sign, a set of parentheses that includes single or double quotes. What I like about these books is these books are filled with examples. So if we take them one at a time, this says select all of the paragraphs in the entire document. This says select every element that has its ID of FAQS. This says select every element that has a class for the dot of minus. You can also work with descendants. So for instance, I'm a descendant of my parents. I'm also a descendant of my grandparents and of my great-grandparents, etc. So when you set up the DOM, you have similar types. So everything, for example, is a descendant of HTML. My code will be a descendant of the stuff that's in the body, all right, etc. You can have things that are adjacent, kind of like my brothers and my sister, for example, and you use a plus sign for that. You can have things that are siblings, not just adjacent siblings on the same level, but any kind of sibling, and there you use a tilde. You can have children, and that's all children as you cascade your way down. So the plus sign for adjacent, the tilde for general, the greater than sign for children, you can also combine them. So as the author says, when you use jQuery, the $sign is used to refer to the jQuery library. Then you code your CSS selectors. How to call the jQuery methods? Well, let's look here at some of the stuff that's going to change. For instance, notice this. var gallons equal $, parenthesis, double quote, pound sign, gallons, double quote, parenthesis, dot val. We used dot value before when we were using, we just had would have like $, gallons in here, dot value or something like that. In jQuery, you put the dot val with just an empty set of parentheses on the right-hand side of an equal sign if you're trying to access the value that's in here. Here we're taking the value that's in there and we're copying it to a variable called gallons. We can also grab the information. You'll notice that there is no equal sign in here, and the dot val has something in it. If the dot val is empty, it's what's known as a getter, where you're accessing or grabbing information. If the dot val has something in it, even the empty string like this, it's called a setter or a mutator, where you are changing its value, setting its value. If you want to grab and you want to set the text in an element, you use the dot text. Here's an example. That's setting text in an element. Here's setting text in a different element. Here's submitting a form. Here's moving the focus. So it's very similar to a lot of the stuff we've already done. Also, what you're going to see as we go in here, and here's an example, we're going to use what's called chaining. So what the system does is it says, okay, on this last name, I'm going to want to do a next, and I'm going to want to do a text. All right? So it does the first one, the first thing that's in here, dot next, and it kind of queues up the second one. And it runs them in sequence. So it says, when that one's done, run this one. And it's not a big thing, but I do want to show you this. Hopefully that copy will work. That if I no it didn't. Yes it did. That if I copy this in like this, let's make it a little bit bigger. So if I copy in that, quite often what you're going to see is instead of it looking like that, since we're using chaining, dot something, all right, since we're using chaining, quite often instead of seeing it written like this, you'll see it written like this, where each dot is on its own line and the dots are lined up. They don't have to be lined up. They don't have to be each on their own line, etc. But most people, when you do a lot of chaining, so you do this, dot this, dot this, dot this 4 or 5 times, you might find it easier to use the object chaining where you put each thing on a different line. Again, it's not at all mandatory that you do that. All right, so how to use some of the event methods. Here's 2 of the ones that you'll use most often. Those being the ready method, which we've already seen with document.ready. Again, the document.ready with a function afterwards, that will replace our window.onload method. As it says, it runs as soon as the DOM is ready. The click runs when the element is clicked. So if we wanted to add an event handler for a button, or for, we wanted to set it up, they have it in here. In here, each time you click an H2 tag, run this function, which will just show an alert that says this heading has been clicked. Recently, I had to come in here and I had to start using a different software package in here, and I don't have the ease of moving around on a page that I used to have. It still works, it's just harder to make it work. All right. In this book, the ready event is always coded the long way. So instead of coding it like this, you can leave off the parentheses, document.ready, and just put the function in there. All right. When you code an event handler within another event handler, the use of closing braces, parentheses, and semicolon is critical to see what lines up with what. All right, so here's the email application redone in jQuery. So what do we have here? We have to put in an email and then match it and then put in a first name. All fields are mandatory. And I believe that's the only thing. We're not checking to make sure it's a valid email, just that we have something here that's the same as this, and something here. Then when you click it, if all those checks passed, you'll go and you'll get another form that comes up that says, thank you for applying to our email list, or something like that. So what's new in here? Well, notice we've added jQuery. Always, always, always add jQuery before your own JS file. Some people believe that jQuery should be added on the bottom right before the body statement. Some put it up here in the head. Considering the fact that we're going to end up in here probably working with document.ready, typically it won't matter. All right. So here is the jQuery, and you can see much has changed. We've got the document.ready. We've got the join list, so when you click on it, you can see what happens. Notice how we're using .val and how the syntax here has changed from what we had earlier. The best way to learn this is to just take a look through it. I mentioned in my class, if you didn't know this, again, I don't know if this has been provided for you by your instructor or not, but you can always come out here and type in Muroc.com. Go to Muroc's website. All right, this is a Muroc text. Go down here. What do we want? There it is. No, that's not the book I want. That is either... Okay, I'll go down to their bestsellers. And I think it's the second or third one here. Try it again. So I can go out here and eventually find our JavaScript and jQuery book. There it is. You can click on it. And eventually it's going to bring that book's page up. And you can go down and under free downloads, you can download all excuse me, you can now download all of the book's applications and exercises. So if you want to go in and take a look at the stuff that's in there and change it, play with it, you're able to do so. All right. On the next 6 pages, 242 through 247, They talk about the most useful selectors, jQuery selectors, jQuery methods, and jQuery events that you'll probably use. This is a subset of what I showed you under the jQuery.com page where we went to the API documentation. The idea behind this, when you look at this list, which is just a subset of the available jQuery selectors, is again, these are the ones that you're going to end up using probably the most often. Do not think, well, I've got to memorize this list. No. Know this list and be able to go back to it here, or go back to it on jQuery.com under the API documentation. They give you a couple of examples, but there's no way in heck that they're going to give you an example of each one of those. As it says, it summarizes the selectors you are most likely to use. Then they do the same thing with the methods you are most likely to use. All right. Then they do the same thing with the most useful event methods. Now in our class, we went over the window.onload. We've done click events. We've done mouse enter, mouse over, mouse out. We've looked at hover. We've looked at the prevent default. All right. But this is how you use them in jQuery. You'll notice right here, this is an event object we just named EVT. Normally it's named EVT or just E. And by clicking right there, again, a lot of times you would associate that with an anchor tag. And what that says is when you click it, don't have it go anywhere. There are a few other methods also. Notice there's an on and off, a one, and a trigger. If you want to attach an event handler to an event, you can do an on, or you can leave the dot on, or just leave it off. It's a little shorter doing it this way. I believe that if you want to take the same event handler and set it to two events, okay, if they're two different elements, you can't use on. If they're on two different copies or two different instances of the same element, you can use the on. Again, you learn this by doing. You don't learn this by trying to memorize stuff. All right? So the chapter ends with, first it goes over the FAQ application. It shows you the HTML. And then they come down and they show you the jQuery. Again, the changes from what we've done before, most of them are shown there in yellow. This toggle class says, if it's a minus, make it a plus. If it's a plus, make it a minus. This says, hey, we might have hyperlinks here, but it's an FAQ page. By default, we don't want them to go anywhere. Then they go through the image swap. All right. And they show you the JScript, or the jQuery. JScript. They show you the jQuery. Most of the time when you write jQuery, you'll get a substantial savings in the numbers of lines of code that you write. It'll be a lot less. Notice here they've got the .each. The .each is typically the way you traverse through an array. You don't use a for each like we used in JavaScript, or a for loop, or a while loop, or a do while loop. You use the .each. Finally, they go over the image rollover and they show you the changes that you'll have to make, all right, in your jQuery. That pretty much is it for the chapter. All right, so again, I cannot emphasize too much the importance of going out to something like the jQuery tutorial here to start. All right, thank you.